This is NBC Nightly News, Thursday, September 9th, with David Brinkley reporting from the NBC News Center in New York.
Good evening. In the famous Little Red Book, quotations from Chairman Mao, on page 227 he said, quote, "All men must die, but death can vary in its significance." Well, Chairman Mao died today, and the significance of his death is enormous, because he was the first man in China's long history ever to unite that country. He united it actively in his younger years and symbolically in his older years, and how it'll go in China without him there, nobody knows. Mao died on the 15th day of the 8th moon, a Chinese holiday. In the biggest Chinese city, Peking, people first heard the news on the local television. And here's a report from Leonard Pratt in Hong Kong.
Most of China's 800 million people learned of the death of the chairman by television and radio. A special half-hour program broadcast the Central Committee's death notice and a long history of Mao's life that praised him as the greatest Marxist of the modern era. Here in Hong Kong, which maintains close economic and cultural ties with the Chinese mainland, Mao's illness and death has touched everyone. Today, British and Chinese flags were lowered to half-staff, and crowds rushed to buy late papers carrying the news. All over town, people gathered around televisions and radios, listening to the reports from Peking. A memorial service is also to be held here in the Bank of China building, which serves as one of Peking's outposts in the city. Analysts here believe Mao's death may present a major threat to his leftist followers within the Peking leadership. With Mao's backing, the so-called radicals managed to purge Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping in April. They demanded that other, more moderate officials be purged as well. But in the last few weeks, the campaign has stalled against firm, moderate resistance. Even the announcement of Mao's death included a strong call for the unity and the unification of the party, a clear sign that disruptive tactics by Mao's followers will not be tolerated. More infighting may follow in Peking, but the best analysts here are saying that Mao's radical vision of China may have died with him. Leonard Pratt, NBC News, Hong Kong.
It was Mao who made the decision to open a new relationship with the United States and to invite Nixon and Kissinger to visit in 1972, and that could in time come to be one of the great events in the histories of both countries. In Washington today, there were expressions of admiration for Mao as a great leader and of hope that the friendship with China would continue and grow. Here is Richard Valeriani.
President Ford, who met Chairman Mao last December, carefully took note of the Chinese leader's impact on history.
Chairman Mao was a giant figure in modern Chinese history. He was a leader whose actions profoundly affected the development of his own country. His influence on history will extend far beyond the borders of China. Americans will remember that it was under Chairman Mao that China moved together with the United States to end a generation of hostility and to launch a new and more positive era in relations between our two countries.
At the State Department, Secretary of State Kissinger appeared to be directing a message at Mao's successors as he talked about the impact of the chairman's death on American-Chinese relations.
When any historic figure disappears, it is extremely difficult to predict everything that his successors will do. The basis of the relationship between China and the United States is mutual interest. I believe that these mutual interests are to some extent independent of personalities, and that therefore the main lines of the policies are likely to be continued.
The Shanghai Communique, which was signed in 1972, established guidelines for the normalization of relations. But while Kissinger can talk confidently about present American policy, his assessment of Peking's policy amounts to an educated guess. For, as he acknowledged, nobody here really knows what's going to happen inside China. Richard Valeriani, NBC News at the State Department.
The Russians announced Mao's death in a flat, matter-of-fact way, offering no perorations or denunciations or political sermons. They sent messages of sympathy, polite but not effusive. They avoided anything provocative, presumably because they hoped to be on better terms with whoever comes next. The only sour, bitter note came from Taiwan, where the radio announcers came on and said, "Good news, the bandit leader is dead." Coming up, an extended look at the life of one of the most effective political leaders of our time, described by John Chancellor. Carter's campaign has formally begun. Ford's has not. Today, however, they were both out attacking each other, Carter formally and Ford informally. And impending crisis in baseball. The Philadelphia Phillies led the league by 15.5 games, but they have choked up and are losing, and their lead is down to 4.5. This and more coming up.
Painting can be a merry-go-round. When you finish, it's almost time to start again.
Not with sunproof latex house paint from Pittsburgh Paints. You see, sunproof latex has a patented formula with built-in acrylic flexibility. Resists cracking, peeling, blistering. Colors are fade-resistant, so you paint less often.
Get off that merry-go-round. Get sunproof latex house paint.
Wherever you see me. The Pittsburgh Paints Peacock.
Now that you've had a drink, oh, what a time to think.
Wow, I could have had a V8.
With just one sip to go, that's the wrong time to know.
Wow, I could have had a V8.
V8 cocktail vegetable juice is a healthful blend of 8 garden vegetables that taste terrific and is naturally low in calories. But remember, the time to think of having a V8 is before you've had something else.
Wow, I could have had a V8.
It's a little bit better day, America, since Mr. Coffee came along.
Mr. Coffee found the way to precisely control water temperature and brewing time so you get a better cup of coffee, America.
You make coffee better than coffee was, and it's only because Mr. Coffee came along.
There's only one, Mr. Coffee.
The formal opening of President Ford's campaign for president will be next Wednesday at the University of Michigan. Informally, however, he was attacking Carter today and saying he talked of withdrawing American troops around the world and weakening our defenses. In a speech to B'nai B'rith, he said he really hadn't wanted to make these cutting remarks and much preferred to be nice, but Carter had driven him to this. Here's Marilyn Berger in Washington.
The president said he had prepared a nonpartisan speech for what he understood as a nonpartisan organization.
But when I saw the morning paper, I was disappointed to see that one of your speakers yesterday apparently kicked off our debates from this rostrum. Well, I got here as quickly as I could. Without objection, I'd like my turn at the plate.
Departing from his text, Mr. Ford gave his rebuttal. Carter, he said, had called for stronger ties with our traditional allies and stronger ties with Israel. Ford went him one better, saying Israel is one of our traditional allies.
As for our other allies, the gentleman has proposed troop withdrawals from Western Europe and from Korea, defense budget cuts that would cripple our ability to supply or sustain our friends, bans on nuclear tests by our allies, a nuclear strategy of massive retaliation policies which would invite a major crisis with our allies, including Israel.
This was the president's opening bid for the Jewish vote. The president stressed his record of support for Israel, part of his overall campaign strategy to run on his record on all issues. The hope clearly was that his listeners would prefer the known quantity, Ford, to the unknown, Carter. Marilyn Berger, NBC News, the White House.
Carter, meanwhile, was moving through the West formally. Of President Ford's attack today, he said, as usual, it bore no relation to the facts. He said he was not talking of weaker defenses, but of reducing the waste and mismanagement in the Pentagon. And whatever Ford says, Carter says he believes it is there, 5 to 6% of it at least. Here's Kenley Jones.
Almost everywhere Carter has gone this week, he has been met by demonstrators attacking his position on abortion. Carter is personally opposed to abortion, but has angered anti-abortionists because he is also opposed to a constitutional amendment to ban it. President Ford, on the other hand, does not oppose giving states the right to ban abortions and has made a point recently of emphasizing that. At a news conference today, Carter implied that Mr. Ford may be trying to capitalize on emotionalism.
I believe that any candidate for president in particular who tries to take a political advantage of an emotional issue like this, which is so divisive and so deeply felt, would create an adverse reaction to that candidacy. And I'll try to avoid it. I'm not trying to avoid the issue, but I will never inject the abortion issue into any forum with the hope that I might derive political benefit from it.
The heated reaction to Carter's clear stand on abortion is an example of why many politicians take fuzzy positions on controversial issues. Carter has been accused of doing that on other issues, but is trying to change his image. He called today for passage of a so-called sunset bill, which would terminate many government programs automatically after a period of time, unless they were renewed by Congress. Carter said that would be a specific way to save the taxpayers' money. There is concern in the Carter campaign that the perception of Carter as being fuzzy on the issues has a momentum of its own, which, if not stopped with specific proposals, could be a serious threat to a Carter victory in November. Kimberly Jones, NBC News, Springfield, Illinois.
Some interesting figures in today's new Harris poll. They show Carter with 49%, Ford with 38%, and Eugene McCarthy with 6%. McCarthy hopes to be on the ballots in 40 states. If so, and if he gets 6% in close states, he could change the result.
This is Roman meal, a unique blend of whole grain wheat and rye, coarsely ground to retain all of the bran in the wheat and the rye germ. Defatted flaxseed is added, along with an extra measure of bran. Roman meal is combined with other nutritious ingredients like enriched flour and pure golden honey. The result? Roman meal bread. The light brown bread with natural whole grain goodness. The Roman Meal Company thought you'd like to know.
Sometimes Bank AmeriCard can make all the difference.
Come on, baby. Let's do the brim twist.
You want to know what the brim twist is? Tell him, Sarge.
It's a twist. Something you don't expect from decaffeinated coffee. Great ground flavor.
Brim decaffeinated coffee's got great ground flavor by the potful. Because it's real ground coffee. And that's the brim twist. Got it?
Try Brim. It's got great ground flavor, and it's decaffeinated, too.
That's the brim twist.
A new study shows that Congress is itself one of the great growth industries in America. Its spending since 1960 has increased 500%, mostly for bigger staff and higher salaries. Its total spending now is close to $2 million a year per member. And its tender mercies for those who work to pay for all of this. Congress is now finishing a new tax bill, endlessly complicated. Irving R. Levine makes heads or tails out of it.
There's something for almost every taxpayer in the complicated new tax bill. Taxpayers get an extension through 1977 of the 10% tax cut that was enacted 2 years ago. Without congressional action, taxes would go up this month. For investors, it will be necessary to hold on to stocks for a longer period to benefit from long-term capital gains. For the very rich, tougher provisions to prevent non-payment of taxes altogether through tax-exempt investments. Also, for high-income taxpayers, so-called tax shelter investments in real estate, oil, and movie production will be more restricted. For industry, the 10% tax credit is continued for investment in new machinery and buildings. For business travelers to conventions overseas, it will be more difficult to deduct expenses from taxes. For gamblers, there will be a withholding tax on most big winnings. For working parents, certain child care expenses can be deducted from taxes. Many liberals in the Congress are disappointed in the tax bill. They say it contains very little, if any, reform. Nevertheless, it is expected to pass both houses of Congress, perhaps as early as next week, and to be signed by President Ford. Irving R. Levine, NBC News at the Capitol.
A man in San Jose died and left $6,000 to be sure somebody continued feeding his cat. Well, now the state tax collector says he wants $608 in inheritance taxes from the cat. New York State has a new moneymaker, a daily lottery. You buy a ticket and you know immediately if you have won anything. It's an instant success and a sellout. Betty Rollin, who does not gamble herself, has looked into this.
New game in town, the instant lottery, and New Yorkers are lapping it up.
Yesterday, some dealers sold out a week's supply before noon, and business appeared not to be slowing up today.
Today's my birthday. Can you count down 9 tickets? Give me the 9th one, then count down 9 again, then count 24? I cannot. Okay.
Tickets are $1 each, and the reason it's called an instant lottery is that you find out right away if you've lost or won. You merely scratch the ticket surface, and if there are 3 matching numbers, it's a win. Mostly, it's not a win.
2,000, 5,000, 5,000.
Oh, I didn't lost.
So you lost that already.
Okay.
See, you got to get them all together.
Nevertheless, hope runs high, very high. You're very hopeful then.
Oh, yeah, really hopeful. $5,000.
Going to buy my parents a house that they can retire in.
New York's last lottery was shut down because of dishonest dealings. State officials promise that this one is on the level. Betty Rollin, NBC News, New York.
In Philadelphia, they're very concerned about their baseball team, the Phillies. 2 weeks ago, this is how the standings looked. The Phillies ahead by 15.5 games, and they seem to have the divisional championship sewed up. But today, this is how the standings look. The Phillies have lost 11 of their last 12 games, and now they're only 4.5 ahead. The Phillies can't seem to play too well under pressure. Some people in sports call it choking. Dick Schaap tells us more about it.
Pee Wee Reese, the old shortstop for the Brooklyn Dodgers, once offered the classic definition of choking. Choking, said Reese, is when you chew gum and the saliva doesn't come.
All I can say is that my mouth's mighty dry right now.
Tim McCarver was only kidding last night, where he and his Philadelphia teammates played the Pittsburgh Pirates. But these days, for McCarver and the Phillies, choking is no laughing matter.
So I guess choking would be the lack of belief in yourself.
It's one of the worst words that you can bring up around a professional athlete because it's a sign of a loser. And
most of this year, the Phillies have been winners. Only 2 weeks ago, they led the National League East by 15.5 games. No team in baseball history has squandered a 15.5 game lead, but the Phillies are threatening to do just that. They have won only 1 game in 2 weeks, which makes it tough for a player to keep the game in perspective.
Baseball's never been a life and death matter to me. You know, life goes on whether you win or whether you don't.
The Phillies didn't win again last night. Dave Cash couldn't come up with this grounder, and 2 Pittsburgh runs scored. The Phillies got 9 hits, but only 1 run. In critical situations, they failed. Second place Pittsburgh won 6-1. Philadelphia's once comfortable lead is now down to 4.5 games. The Phillies may not be choking, but they are certainly not exhibiting what Hemingway called courage, grace under pressure. Dick Schaap, NBC News, Pittsburgh.
How well does your denture adhesive hold at 7 hours? This powder denture grip is designed to hold with a long-lasting plastic formula. In fact, when compared to the leading powder adhesive, an independent clinical test showed denture grip held up to 40% stronger at the end of 7 hours. How well does your denture adhesive hold at 7 hours? Try denture grip. Compared to the leading powder adhesive, denture grip holds up to 40% stronger at the end of 7 hours.
Look, I don't wear panties anymore.
because under all my dresses, under all my clingy knits, under all my slightly tight pants, I wear underalls. Underalls are pantyhose with smooth little panties knit right in, so there's never a panty line or bump or bulge to show through your clothes. Oh, I love my underalls because they make me look like I'm not wearing nothing.
Underalls are only visible at department and specialty stores.
It doesn't cramp my style.
It doesn't cramp my style.
What doesn't cramp my style? Phillips, milk of magnesia. When I have constipation, I rely on Phillips. It really works, and it doesn't interfere with my day.
Unlike most laxatives, Phillips formula puts your natural body water to work, drawing it to where it's needed to soften and lubricate. Relieves constipation in hours, usually without cramps. Phillips, regular, chocolate, or mint.
It really works, and it doesn't cramp your style.
One of Richard Nixon's successes was the opening to China. He said tonight that Mao Zedong was a unique man in a generation of great revolutionary leaders, and he was confident Mao's successor would continue a friendship with the United States. In a long lifetime, Mao made himself one of the world's most powerful men, the leader of 1/4 of the human race. Here's a look at his career, reported by John Chancellor.
Mao was born in 1893 in this farmhouse near the village of Shaoshang in the central province of Hunan. While still a boy, Mao saw starving peasants put to death because they had come into town and begged for food. He later said such sights were among the experiences that made him a revolutionary. In 1919, Mao went to Peking to work as an assistant librarian at the National University. He started reading the works of Karl Marx and began viewing China's political and social problems as a class struggle. By 1921, Mao was an ardent Marxist, and in July of 1921, he and 12 other people organized the Communist Party of China. For several years, the Communists and the Kuomintang, now led by Chiang Kai-shek, worked together against the Republican government that came to power in 1912, after overthrowing the Manchu emperors. But in 1927, Chiang broke with Mao, outlawed communism, and sent his troops to find Mao's followers and kill them. Thousands of peasants and workers were rounded up, shot, or beheaded. Those who weren't executed went underground, fighting Chiang's troops in an economic blockade that left the communists close to starvation. Finally, in 1934, Mao and one of his generals led 90,000 men, women, and children on a 6,000-mile march from Jiangxi province in South China to the mountains of the north. The Great Long March, one of the most remarkable strategic retreats in history. Mao and his followers crossed mountains, wild rivers, barren plateaus, and a dozen huge provinces. They not only had to fight Chiang's soldiers, but hostile mountain tribesmen and warlords as well. By the time the march was over and Chiang's pursuit stopped, only 20,000 of Mao's people were left alive. For 10 years, they stayed in this barren, rocky valley, living in caves in the mountainsides. And it was here, in 1939, that Mao married his fourth wife, the actress Jiang Jing. They had 2 daughters. While living in this valley, Mao trained the army that one day would return to fight and defeat Chiang Kai-shek. By 1949, Mao's army had driven Chiang into the sea and onto the island of Formosa, now Taiwan. Mao took over a country that had been exploited and neglected for centuries by its rulers. China's feudal system had left the country politically divided, poor in industry, poor in agriculture. But Mao changed that. In the next 20 years, new factories were built and old ones improved. A system of rural communes was established that increased agricultural production so that famine all but disappeared. Mao also undertook the gigantic task of uniting the Chinese people. He put down revolts, sometimes ruthlessly. He transformed China from a collection of feudal baronies into a modern country. His presence was everywhere, in statues, on posters, and in the pages of the Little Red Book, quotations from Chairman Mao. In the mid-1960s, Mao's health began to fail. Rumors spread that he was near death. Among the ways the government counteracted those rumors was to release this film in 1966. They said it showed the 73-year-old Mao swimming downstream for 10 miles in the Yangtze River. That was not impossible. Mao was a strong swimmer and loved swimming. As the leader of China, the symbol of China, one of Mao's functions was to greet foreigners like these African leaders. Over the years, most of those who met Mao found him animated, alert, and to the surprise of many, occasionally full of humor. But age and infirmity put an end to these duties in June of 1976. And so, full of years and honors, Mao spent his final days living in what was once an emperor's palace in Peking, receiving the world's most celebrated and important people. An invitation to this palace was highly sought after and most difficult to get. And why not? When the history of this century is written, it will say that Mao Zedong was one of the most powerful men of the 20th century. The man who shaped history for the world's most populous country. No wonder they came and shook his hand.
Tonight at 10 o'clock, 9 Central and Mountain Time, Tom Brokaw and I will be here for an NBC News special report, The Death of Chairman Mao. The NBC Thursday night movie will be shown an hour earlier than planned. Thank you, and good night for all of us at NBC News.
Acid indigestion sufferers, all antacids are not alike. Digel is different. This animation illustrates how trapped gas often churns up with excess stomach acid. Plain antacids have nothing to relieve this problem. But Digel is different. It adds a special anti-gas medicine to its soothing antacids. The Digel difference works fast to help break up trapped gas and relieve acid indigestion misery. For more complete relief, get the Digel difference.
There's a kind of warmth that's uniquely a woman's. You give so much of yourself. But some days, when you're not feeling your best because of occasional irregularity, you take Correctol, the modern gentle laxative. Correctol's medically proven formula combines a mild laxative with a softening agent. Its gentle overnight action helps you feel like yourself again. Try the modern gentle laxative so many women are using, Correctol.
Tonight's movie will be presented 1 hour earlier. See The UFO Incident, a dramatic story based on facts, starring James Earl Jones and Estelle Parsons. Tonight, starting at 8, 7 Central and Mountain Time. Then see The Death of Chairman Mao Zedong, an NBC News special report with David Brinkley and Tom Brokaw. Tonight at 10, 9 Central and...
So when you get the urge for a great pizza, come to the place that's famous for it.
Pizza Hut, there's a lot of good things under our roof.
Jim Reed's not giving away free hot dogs, but if you'll come down before their 76 closeout sale ends Saturday, they will give you...
No, 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 no.
When you're watching your weight, too much of even a good thing can be a no-no.